I've been showing homes in the Montgomery County, Maryland area and across the DMV for over 20 years. And there are certain houses, certain homes, certain properties that when I walk into them or around them, they make me immediately nervous. They may look great online, but unless you know what to look for, they can turn out to be very costly mistakes later on. Today, I'm going to walk you through the different types of homes I tell my buyers to avoid. Most buyers focus on the staging, the online photos, the kitchen, the paint colors, but the big problems are often things you don't notice through a quick walkthrough. I was showing a house, gosh, it must be about 10 years ago now, to some folks, and we were walking through it, and I was noticing these different things that I found a bit unsettling. One of which was the fact that the floors had been refinished, probably by someone who didn't know what they were doing, Harry homeowner, as it were, and they were rippled and they weren't flat and smooth, and they used the wrong finish. And I pointed this out to my guys, and they still liked the house a lot. But I took it as a clue that there could be other issues, which is exactly what happened. During their inspection, they found other issues and other items of concern, and they eventually voided that sale and moved on to another house that was in much better shape. But these are issues that come up again and again and again. Some of these homes have hidden structural problems. Some of them may have terrible resale potential, and some of them could have issues that could cost tens of thousands of dollars to fix later on. The first one I want to mention is when a house backs to or fronts up to a major road. This can be major. This can be a big issue down the road and can cost you lots of money in resale potential. You've got noise, you've got dirt, you've got safety issues. So any house that fronts up to a major street, and in some cases around here backs up to the beltway or the sound barriers of the beltway or some other major road, and they will be issues that people will look at down the road. Now, the reality is that once one lives in a house like this, they may become used to it. And a lot of people do live on busy roads. A lot of people do live in houses that back up to the beltway and other major roads. But when you're trying to get your house off the market and people see that, their first instinct is to cringe and run away. So you want to take that in consideration when you're buying, if that issue is of consequence to you, or you consider it'll be consequence to you for you down the road. So be careful of buying houses that are right upon or back up to a major road, major thoroughfare, a busy highway. Those can all be potential resale nightmares down the road, especially if the market is slower than it might be when you bought. Now, the next one is a quick cosmetic flip. Now, flips have a bad name in just because they're flips. People don't like to use the word flip. They get worried about using the word flip. A flipped house is not necessarily a bad thing. And a flipped house that is of quality can save you a lot of grief. But there are things to look for that tell you that it was a cheap flip. One, look at the light switches and the outlets. If they've been painted over without having been removed, you know they got the low bidder as the painter. Another thing to look out for is the flooring. If you look very carefully at the pictures online, you can tell this, but sometimes it's not so easy. But sometimes you have a house that would have nice wood floors and they've covered it over with some cheap laminate flooring. First thing you want to ask is, well, was there damage to that flooring in the first place? Second thing is why didn't you use something more durable and better quality if you were going to cover up those hardwood floors? So both of those issues will be indicators that the property, when it was flipped, was done with poor level of finish in mind. Believe it or not, even the type of paint can be used, can be a sign of whether the flip was done with a high quality renovation in mind. Feel it, feel the doorways, feel the stair railings. If it feels sticky, they use the cheap paint. You can bet your bottom dollar that very shortly after you buy this house, that could all start to peel or become damaged very easily. So watch for those indicators of a cheap flip. Don't worry about a flip if it's done well, if the cabinets are good solid, if they used a good countertop, if the floors have been refinished instead of covered over, if the paint looks like it was done by a professional. These are all things to look for. But run like hell away from a cheap flip because you're just going to have problems down the road. Another big one around here is homes with chronic water problems. Now, these aren't always easy to spot, but if you're careful and you look around, you can see signs. You want to look in the basement. If you see darkening of the foundation walls, that's a sure sign. If you see efflorescence or substances that seem to be bleeding through the material of the basement wall, that's another sign. If you go outside and you look up at the gutters and you see that there are sprouts growing from the gutters that are supposed to be getting rid of the water around your property, then you know that water is not being carried away from the property and could be a problem. Look for areas in the yard where water is standing. Those are all signs that there could be moisture problems. And moisture is one of the biggest enemies to a house. There is always rain. There is always going to be rain. There's always going to be moisture in the environment. The whole point is that moisture being carried away from the property, or is it being allowed to leach in and cause further damage? Look outside the house too. If you're going around the perimeter of the house, if it looks like mud and dirt has splashed up against the house, you have a pretty good sign that the water is dripping heavily and not running away from the property, and it's splashing up against the property, which could be a sign that there's water inside the property, which is something you want to not have under any circumstances. Now, another big thing is finding a home that has an unpermitted addition or unpermitted renovations. Now, not all improvements to a house require inspections by the county, but some do, and if they aren't done, that could be a sign that the work wasn't done properly in the first place. And if it wasn't done properly in the first place, it could cost you tons of money down the road to get it fixed. Additionally, you could have trouble with appraisal. You could have trouble with legal concerns. You could have trouble with insurance. And if your buyer comes in after you've owned that property and has the same problem, you could be the one on the hook down the road. Good thing is, here in Montgomery County, there is a website that you can go to and you can find out a lot about what permits were or were not done, whether they were started, whether they were completed and closed out. And there is a website where you can find that out. Now, it's not complete, it's not always 100%, but there is a lot of information out there. You just have to look and you have to ask. But the thing to be careful of is buying a house where work has been done without permits. That could indicate that the owner himself did it, and maybe he was qualified, but maybe he wasn't. Or he had a couple of his buddies over with a case of beer to install something. So you have to be careful. There is no way to know down the road. And quite frankly, some of the issues that were, some of the repairs or renovations that were done, maybe before the current owner. So those records online, if you can find them, will help tell you that so you'll know what to watch out for. So be careful of unpermitted additions to the property, unpermitted renovations, because they can be signs where work was not done properly, not done per the current codes, and could leave you with some sort of severe and expensive health safety issue down the road. Now, here's another one that most people don't think with or think of. Make sure that if you're buying a house in a homeowner association or a condo that has a condo association governing it, that there are adequate reserves. Make sure the budget is proper. There are always restrictions in a covenant, but make sure they're not too restrictive. And make sure that the reserves aren't underfunded and there are no planned special assessments. Most people don't think about this. People get the documents, buyers get them, they look at them briefly, throw them in a corner somewhere or file them on the computer and don't pay attention to them. The most common thing I hear is nobody reads those things. Well, that may be true, that may not be right. So make sure that you get your homeowner association documents or your condo resale package and look them over. Look at the budget. They're all required to report how much money is supposed to be in reserves and how much they have, whether there's a special assessment, whether there's some major capital repair coming that is or is not covered. So this can be something that very, very costly down the road. I had a buyer buy a condo some years ago, and this condo association did put in their resale package that there was a special assessment plan. It was in the documents. It was clearly printed. The buyer didn't look at them, so didn't catch this. So down the road, very shortly after settlement, there was a requirement to front up and pay a $10,000 special assessment. So you want to avoid that. If you're buying a home, be careful and look out for the hidden nuisances. They're not always out there in clear view, but there are some times when there are nuisances that could be potential safety and health hazards, or just eyesores that could affect your resale down the road. Some of those include power lines. You could be close to an industrial site. And if you're viewing a property in the evening, you might not see the truck traffic that goes thundering by the house during the daytime. If you're close to an airport, there could be airport noise, being close to a flight path. And here's one for you that many people won't think of. Don't buy near a cemetery. I was showing some houses a few years ago in the Alexandria area, and it was right across the street from a cemetery. The price on the house was great. The house was actually really lovely, but being right across from a cemetery could be a problem down the road. Those folks certainly aren't going to hurt you, but the perception of that being right across the street could give a lot of buyers pause if they were considering the house. And then there's radon. A lot of people don't think about radon, but in Montgomery County, there is a requirement for radon testing to be done by the seller if you don't include that as part of your contract. Radon is odorless, colorless, and it does have health risks attached to it. So you want to ensure that those radon levels are tested for, and if they are high, that you have something done about them. So there are hidden nuisances in properties that you have to watch for, and have to look carefully and closely to find. And those are things to avoid when you're shopping for a house. Now, here's one that I hear a lot about, but hardly ever gets talked about up front. It's homes that look great, but have poor, awkward layouts. May have very small bedrooms that are hardly usable. Maybe situations in some older homes where you have to walk through one room to get to another, particularly a problem when it comes to bedrooms. Oftentimes, when a house was remodeled, it was done at quite a bit different time than when it was originally built, so it is not seamlessly done. It could look very different comparing the old and the new, and sometimes you make that work, but sometimes it just doesn't. So that can be a problem. Resale, that can be a problem just living in it, trying to figure out what you're going to use which room for in the first place. But this can definitely become an issue down the road, and it's not uncommon at all. As I'm touring houses with potential buyers, they go, "It's a really nice house, but it feels awkward, or it feels cramped, or it doesn't feel like it's intuitive." And especially when it comes to the kitchen and the main living areas, this can be a big problem down the road when you're trying to sell this house again. So when you're touring houses, when you're checking out where you want to spend the next 5, 10, 15, 30 years, what should you do? Well, the whole idea of marketing a property is to get you to look at it from an aesthetic viewpoint, which is good. Get you in the house, gets you to look around. But don't stop there. There are other things to look at aside from just the aesthetics. Look at the location, look at the structure, look at how those things impact long term resale value. These are all very important. And considering the fact that in this area, most people don't live in houses 20 and 30 years, they sell them much sooner. So the impact of resale ability is a higher concern than it was maybe 30, 40 years ago. Trust your local expert and talk to him or her. Get his viewpoint or her viewpoint on the house you're buying, how that style of house reflects or relates to resale down the road, the condition of it. There are lots of different things that factor into a house than just whether it's the prettiest one on the block. That certainly matters, but there are other things as well. And in Bethesda, Silver Spring, Rockville, the whole area across Montgomery County, there's a wide range of house to choose from. So you don't have to pick one just because it has one or two or three of the aspects you need. Look deeper, look longer term, and you'll find the house that you can really love for as long as you want to. So when you're looking for your next house, keep these 7 factors in mind, and I think you'll be happy with the result.